The palace glittered that night with chandeliers blazing and banners of alien nations draped across vaulted ceilings. The air was rich with spices and the murmur of diplomacy, nobles trying to impress each other with words dipped in honey and daggers hidden beneath. At the heart of it all stood the great banquet table, dishes steaming, sauces shimmering, platters arranged with obsessive precision. Every plate had passed through the hands of a man no one thought much of, a human cook with tired eyes and scarred fingers, who moved among his staff with the discipline of a commander and the silence of a shadow. He was older than most who worked the kitchen, hair salted by years, body worn but still straight-backed. The younger servants teased him sometimes, whispering about his scars and his strange, alert way of moving as if he expected trouble behind every door. To them, he was just a stubborn relic who insisted every blade be kept sharp and every dish plated with care so meticulous it bordered on military order. He didn't argue with them, didn't explain why he demanded perfection. He simply cooked, letting the hiss of oil and the chop of knives speak for him. Tonight he had crafted meals fit for more than kings. Alien dignitaries expected flavors beyond imagination, and he had delivered. Fermented fruits balanced against seared meats, subtle earth herbs that coaxed even hardened warriors into closing their eyes with surprise. Every motion he made carried weight, every taste a gamble, every plate a battlefield where failure meant humiliation for his people. In this hall, the cook's weapons were salt, heat, and time. The steward drifted close, watching him inspect a line of dishes, lips curling with disdain. "You worry too much," the steward muttered, half sneering, half lecturing. "Remember your place. You're a chef, not a warrior. If anything goes wrong tonight, you stay in your kitchens and let real men handle it." The words were meant to sting, but the cook only wiped his hands and gave no answer. Arguing was pointless. He had heard such things too many times. Still, his senses kept tugging at him. A crate had gone missing earlier in the day, the count of wine casks not matching the tally he had memorized. The metallic tang beneath the perfume of roasted fowl nagged at his instincts. Guards swaggered through the hall, boasting loudly of their security, their armor gleaming, their blades polished. But the cook's eyes caught shadows where they shouldn't be, movements too deliberate in the corners, and his gut, honed by years of surviving things he never spoke about, tightened like a clenched fist. Guests entered in waves, robes sweeping across the polished floor, jeweled cups raised in toasts. The alien ambassador himself arrived with an entourage, tall and radiant, face unreadable, every step followed by guards meant to deter even the bravest assassin. Cheers filled the hall as the summit began, words of peace rising with the clinking of glasses. Yet beneath the music and chatter, the cook's ears picked out something off, a rhythm too precise, breaths too measured, as though predators crouched unseen. He kept moving, adjusting dishes, straightening utensils, but his gaze never stopped sweeping the room. Years in kitchens had taught him more than timing recipes. They had drilled into him the art of awareness, of watching everything at once, knowing exactly when a dish was about to burn even while tending 5 others. That same awareness now warned him that this banquet was about to shift from celebration to something darker. The nobles laughed, soldiers joked, and the steward smirked, satisfied in his certainty that nothing could threaten them. Only the cook remained uneasy, hands flexing unconsciously as he brushed crumbs from the steel counter. The pan on the fire sizzled, iron heavy and steady, a simple tool born for heat and labor. His reflection glimmered faintly in its surface, and for a brief moment, the cook wondered if this night would force him to use his hands for something other than food. Because though he wore the apron of a servant, though the world dismissed him as nothing more than a man who fed others, there was a storm beneath the calm. He did not seek battle anymore, but battle had a way of finding him. And as the summit moved toward its first toast, he felt that storm stirring again, warning him the peace everyone toasted was fragile as glass, one breath away from shattering. The toast had barely touched the ambassador's lips when the first blade flew. It sliced through candlelight with a whistle, embedding itself in the table where a heartbeat earlier the alien's chest had been. Gasps shattered into screams as masked figures burst from the shadows, moving with practiced precision. The guards, caught in arrogance, stumbled to react, their polished armor turning into shackles as assassins cut them down with ruthless speed. The cook stood near the edge of the chaos, eyes narrowing. His hands twitched toward the tools at hand, cleavers carving knives, a skillet still hot from the fire. His staff scattered, trays crashing, wine spilling red as blood across marble floors. The steward shrieked orders, voice trembling, but no one listened. The trained killers were already advancing, 15 strong, blades glinting, each movement designed to leave no witness alive. He did not think, he acted. The skillet swung up, iron cracking into the jaw of the first assassin who lunged toward him. Bone gave way with a sickening snap, the body dropping instantly. Oil still hissed on the pan's surface, and he flicked it with a twist, spraying searing droplets into the eyes of another attacker. The man screamed, blinded, stumbling backward into the path of his ally's blade. Knives meant for carving roasts now danced in his grip. He moved with a fluidity no one expected from a cook, every step precise, every strike honed by training buried beneath years of quiet life. He caught a wrist, twisted, and redirected a dagger into its owner's chest. Another came from behind. He turned, skillet raised, and the heavy iron rang like a bell against a skull, dropping the assassin in a heap. The ambassador's guards tried to rally, but most were already bleeding on the floor. The assassins pressed harder, calculating that a lone chef could not matter. Yet he was already among them, moving through the chaos with terrifying efficiency. He fought as though the kitchen had been his battlefield all along, ducking low as if reaching for an oven tray, pivoting with the grace of turning a roast, striking with the same force he once used to tenderize stubborn cuts of meat. They underestimated him. That mistake was fatal. A cleaver flashed, not across meat, but across an exposed throat. He did not pause to watch the fall. The skillet slammed into another attacker's chest, the impact cracking ribs, air wheezing from crushed lungs. He pivoted again, catching a blade on the thick iron, sparks spitting, then smashed the edge of the pan into the assassin's temple. The body fell twitching. Panic rippled through the noble guests, some fleeing under tables, others frozen in shock. They saw not a cook but a predator unleashed, a storm in human skin. His apron was spattered with blood, his calm face illuminated by firelight, eyes locked only on the threats. For him there was no banquet, no summit, no politics. Only the fight, only survival. One assassin raised a crossbow, aiming for the ambassador. The cook hurled the skillet. It spun end over end, iron gleaming, before smashing into the man's face with such force his skull caved in. The weapon clattered to the ground beside the corpse, still warm, still dangerous. The cook crossed the room without hesitation, scooping it up again as though reclaiming a trusted ally. The assassins faltered now, exchanging uneasy glances. This was not supposed to happen. He was just a human cook, an old man with scars and tired eyes. Yet he had already left half their number broken on the floor. They adjusted, forming a circle, blades raised in synchronization. He stood in the center, skillet in one hand, knife in the other, shoulders squared. He did not flinch. They attacked in a wave. He met them with brutal simplicity, no wasted motion. A pan to the jaw, a knife to the kidney, a kick to the knee that shattered bone. He fought like he cooked, methodical, relentless, every action purposeful. The clang of iron on steel filled the hall, mixed with cries of pain, gasps of horror, and the acrid scent of spilled oil mingled with blood. When the last attacker lunged, the cook sidestepped, dragging him down with a twist of the arm, then brought the skillet down once, final and absolute. Silence fell heavy, broken only by the groans of the wounded. 15 assassins lay defeated, their weapons scattered like fallen silverware across the blood-stained floor. The nobles stared, wide-eyed, whispering disbelief. The steward, pale and trembling, could barely form words. The ambassador rose slowly, his unreadable gaze fixed on the man who had just saved his life. Guards who had once boasted of their strength now bowed their heads in shame. The cook wiped his skillet clean on his apron, breath steady despite the carnage. He said nothing, offering no explanation. His eyes swept the hall once more, ensuring no threat remained. Only then did he allow himself the smallest exhale, as though this had been nothing more than another night's work. The peace summit was not over, but the balance had shifted. For in that blood-soaked hall, everyone present now understood a truth that chilled them more than the attack itself. Humanity's strength did not rest in armies or weapons, but in the resilience and fury hidden even in those they dismissed as ordinary. And the chef, once overlooked, now stood as the embodiment of that truth. The floor was slick with blood, yet the cook moved through it with the same measured steps he once used in a bustling kitchen. Around him, silence pressed hard. Nobles huddled against the walls, whispering in disbelief, eyes darting between the butchered assassins and the man who had felled them. The ambassador, unharmed but shaken, studied him not with gratitude, but calculation, as if reevaluating everything known about humans in a single breath. The guards, wounded and humiliated, avoided his gaze, their pride torn apart by the fact that a chef had done what their steel and discipline could not. Whispers spread fast. How could a cook fight like that? How could a simple human dispatch assassins trained in shadow arts? Rumors began before the blood dried. Some claimed he must be an assassin himself, planted under disguise. Others muttered of human mercenary programs, legends long dismissed. The steward stammered denials, insisting he was only the head of the royal kitchens, a man with a reputation for strict standards and long hours behind the stove. But the image of him wielding a skillet like a warhammer could not be erased. The ambassador approached, his robes dragging through the carnage. He asked the question others dared not. "Who are you really?" The cook met his gaze with calm silence, his expression unreadable. He gave no titles, offered no explanations. Instead, he cleaned his blade with slow precision, the skillet resting heavy in his other hand. The message was clear. He would not justify himself, not to nobles, not to aliens, not to anyone. His actions spoke louder than names. That silence carried weight. It unsettled them more than defiance would have. If he was merely a cook, what did that say about the rest of humanity? If the weakest of their kind could carve through 15 trained killers, then what power lay in their soldiers, their hunters, their hidden warriors? Doubt gnawed at the assembly, reshaping how they viewed their fragile peace. Fear was a sharper blade than any assassin's knife, and now it hung in the air. Still, politics could not wait. Accusations flew like daggers. Some accused rival factions of sending the assassins to sabotage the summit. Others pointed fingers at the ambassador himself, suggesting the attack was staged to garner sympathy. The cook stood apart, letting the storm rage, his skillet hanging loose at his side. He was not part of their games, but his presence was inescapable, a silent reminder of the price of underestimating humanity. Word of his actions spread beyond the banquet hall within hours. Servants whispered to guards, guards whispered to nobles, nobles whispered to courtiers. By the next morning, the entire palace buzzed with the tale. The cook had crushed 15 assassins with nothing but a skillet and kitchen steel. Embellishments grew. Some claimed he fought barehanded, others that fire itself obeyed him. Truth twisted into legend before his eyes, but he made no effort to correct it. Myths had their uses, especially when enemies needed to think twice. The ambassador summoned him privately, seeking answers others could not demand. He pressed for details, asked about training, demanded to know how a man of the kitchens could move like a warrior born. The cook finally spoke, his voice low and even. He said he had once been a soldier, long ago, on distant battlefields where survival was measured in seconds. He had left that life behind, trading steel for spice, violence for craft. But old habits never die, only sleep, waiting for the day they are called again. That day had come. The ambassador listened, and in his eyes flickered something close to fear. Humans, long dismissed as minor players, suddenly loomed as potential equals or threats. If one man could do this, what of the many? What of their armies? What of their potential when cornered? The balance of power shifted with that thought, invisible yet undeniable. The cook returned to his kitchen, resuming his duties as though nothing had changed. Pots boiled, knives chopped, fire roared. But the staff moved differently now, with nervous glances and hushed reverence. They saw not just their head chef, but a man cloaked in mystery, dangerous and untouchable. Guests who once dismissed him now watched him closely, careful not to speak carelessly within earshot. The banquet hall had become his battlefield, and everyone knew it. Yet for him, there was no glory, no triumph. Only necessity. He had defended the ambassador not for politics or peace, but because no one else could. Because 15 assassins stood between survival and slaughter, and someone had to act. That was all. Still, deep within, he felt the old rhythm stirring again, the rhythm of war, of instincts honed in blood and fire. It was a part of him he had buried, but tonight proved it had never left. The summit would continue, but under a shadow his skillet had cast. And though he sought no recognition, no power, the truth had spread beyond his control. Humanity's mask of weakness had cracked, and behind it, others now glimpsed the predator that lurked within. The cook did not ask for this. He wanted quiet, wanted peace. But fate had no interest in peace for men like him. It had thrust him once more into a war he never chose, and in that hall, everyone present knew the same truth. They would never look at a human the same way again. The palace corridors whispered long after the banquet ended. Stories traveled faster than servants could carry trays, and by dawn, the tale of the chef with the iron skillet had reached ears far beyond the marble walls. Nobles spoke of him in hushed tones, afraid to say too much, afraid to underestimate what they could no longer ignore. To them, he was no longer just a cook, but a symbol, one that unsettled the fragile balance holding the summit together. Delegates from rival systems studied him closely, weighing each movement, searching for signs that would confirm their growing fears. Could it be true that humans had warriors hidden among their workers? If a man who spent years slicing vegetables and stirring pots could destroy 15 assassins without hesitation, what might their actual soldiers be capable of? The thought lingered, sharp as any blade, reshaping calculations made in secret councils and whispered exchanges. The cook remained in the background, refusing attention, yet unable to escape it. Every meal he prepared was met with nervous gratitude. Every glance at his scarred hands carried unspoken questions. He gave them no answers. He did not need to. His silence held more weight than speeches, his presence more commanding than armed guards. The summit no longer revolved solely around treaties and trade. It now revolved around the human who had stood alone against death and emerged unscathed. When questioned publicly, he dismissed the incident with the same steady calm he carried into the kitchen. He claimed no honor, no pride, no claim to power. He spoke only of necessity, of doing what had to be done when others failed. Yet the more he denied glory, the more they ascribed it to him. For in their eyes, restraint was proof of control, and control was proof of strength. His unwillingness to boast only deepened their fear. Behind closed doors, factions plotted. Some sought to ally with humanity, hoping to bind such strength before it turned against them. Others whispered of preemptive measures, of curbing a species that clearly held more within than they had shown. Suspicion thickened the summit air, poisoning fragile negotiations. All because of one man who had tried only to cook a meal. The ambassador, whose life he had saved, regarded him with both respect and unease. Gratitude could not erase the new reality. Humanity could not be ignored. They could not be dismissed as harmless. The chef had proven that even their quietest carried storms within. For some, it was reassurance. For others, a threat. For all, a revelation. The cook himself did not dwell on politics. His battlefield was the kitchen, his weapon fire and steel meant for food, not war. Yet as he sharpened knives, he felt the weight of eyes on him. The knowledge that his past, once buried, was now unearthed for all to see. He had not wanted this, but it had come, and with it came change no skillet could undo. On the final night of the summit, as the last agreements were signed and the last toasts raised, the cook stood apart. He watched leaders bow heads and shake hands, watched them conceal unease with practiced smiles. He saw how often their gazes flicked toward him, how the memory of blood still lingered behind their eyes. He had become more than he wished to be. Proof. Proof that humanity could never again be measured by appearances alone. When it ended, he returned to his kitchen, to his fire, to his craft. He scrubbed the skillet clean, as he always had, until the iron shone once more. To him, it was still just a pan. To everyone else, it was legend. A symbol of a truth they could not ignore, that humanity's strength lay not in their weapons, but in the will that turned anything, even a skillet, into a weapon when survival demanded it. The peace summit did not collapse, but it did not leave unchanged. Those who left carried with them more than treaties. They carried a story, a warning, that humanity, underestimated too long, was far from harmless. And should the galaxy test them again, they would find that even in kitchens, humans had warriors waiting to rise. The cook, however, asked for nothing. He lived as he had before, shaping meals with steady hands, tending fire with patience. But within him, the old rhythm still stirred, the one that awoke when assassins came and peace hung by a thread. He had been a soldier once. He had become a chef. And when the moment demanded, he had been something else entirely, something the galaxy would not soon forget. In the end, he left no speeches, no records, no claims of glory. Only silence, the iron skillet, and the undeniable truth that the galaxy now whispered in awe and fear. Humanity was never weak.